Thanks to Michael Newton, now we know what happens on the other side.
Welcome to Soul Guide with Vondi Lozano, a show about past lives, life between lives, and this life.
Hey everybody, happy Thanksgiving weekend. I'm Vondi Lozano and I'm really excited to be here with you today. And in honor of Thanksgiving, I'm expressing a little gratitude and love for Michael Newton and Life Between Lives because it has changed my life and I know it has changed many of you, your lives. So thank you for being here and thank you for sharing in this Thanksgiving weekend with me. So I do have a little bit of slides to share with you as always. And if you're listening on the podcast later on, I basically say everything that I'm showing, but I'm just visual. So it helps me to have the slides to look at. So gratitude for Michael Newton. So sometimes because he passed the year I joined the Newton Institute and did my training, that it's hard for me to remember he was an actual real person because he's such a legend in my mind. But he was a real person, a psychologist doing regular hypnosis when he accidentally stumbled on Life Between Lives hypnosis, when he asked someone to go to their source of their deep loneliness. And they went to the time in between our lives when they were with their soul family and no one had incarnated with them in this life. And I later learned it's because she wanted to work on independence in this life. But still, that was the source of her deep loneliness. And he, of course, was blown away, like any of us would be. And he went on to do just these cases, just investigating this. He did 7,000 cases without really revealing this to anybody except maybe his wife, Peggy, who was his dear soulmate and partner. And she helped him with a lot of this work. And then he was brave enough to write about it and publish Journey of Souls, and then Destiny of Souls and many of his other books. And then there are books being written by the Newton Institute to carry on his legacy. But what a brave thing to not only do the work, but then to share the work when you come from kind of an academic professional background. So we learned, thanks to Michael Newton, that this is the next step beyond what I would call traditional past life hypnosis. So instead of looking at our life and saying, if something bad happens to you, oh, that must be karma, you're being punished for something you did in a past life. It's different. If you have a hard life and hard things are going on, it's usually because you're an advanced soul and you chose a hard life because you're working on really tough, challenging lessons like developing compassion. So you're not being punished. We sign up for these specific tasks because that's what we want to develop in ourselves as a soul. So your life is related to your overall soul journey and purpose. It's not just a response to something you did or didn't do in a past life. And then also, we don't just leapfrog from life to life. Our whole life between lives happens in between. In fact, that's real life. This is Earth School. So we choose a life for a specific purpose to advance our soul's development and then bring that learning back to the other side. So we're here to focus on this thing that we're researching, what we're wanting to develop in ourselves, what we're wanting to bring back to that oneness, to source, to essence on the other side. Things aren't just randomly happening to us. But even though we choose a specific life and specific lessons, we still have free will. The only thing is if we don't, how do I want to say it? If we don't finish the lesson in this life, then we just choose to come back and do it next time, which is okay too. We learn that we each have a primary soul guide, a spirit guide. This is someone who probably incarnated but isn't incarnating anymore. And then I always say we were our spirit guide's graduation present. So when they get to a certain level, and this is what they're going to do, we all have jobs. Their job is going to be a spirit guide. Then they're given us a little soul when we're born, when we're created. If you're interested in how that happens, Molly's episode in her Life Between Lives session talks about the soul nursery, which is very exciting. But she saw the little souls being created from a wall of light. And then they were taken into the arms of nurses. But your spirit guide was there and has been with you since your soul was created. He's like, or she, a sponsor, a mentor, a teacher, a friend, not so advanced that they can't relate to us, but definitely a little further along than we are. And so when we cross over, that's usually what happens. You're usually met by your spirit guide. Though every now and then, very advanced souls skip the spirit guide part and they just go straight to their soul group. but they still have a spirit guide. And there we have a soul group. This is our family of souls that we incarnate with over and over. And I know a lot of you know this, but to me, like, we didn't know this before Michael Newton. Like, what a miracle this is. I did some mediumship training before all of this, and we could connect with the other side, but we didn't really know what souls are doing over there. Even my mediumship friend, Beecham Parker, was really fascinated and interested to find out more about what we're actually doing over there. So we change roles each time depending on what we want to learn, but our soul family doesn't necessarily change. We often have a special soulmate, sometimes a romantic partner, but not always, that we incarnate with over and over through many lives. It can be a close family member. I've seen it be a cousin, a very close friend, but just the special soul that we have a special bond with. And again, if you've watched Molly's episode and Lauren's episode, they talk about being two halves of a whole, or the in Molly's it was the last two souls to divide. So they really came from one soul and then split into two. And then sometimes we have soul contracts that we say, in this life, I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to work on. In Leah's lesson, she was talking about she had hurt her husband in a past life. And the goal was for her to be strong, but she had gotten carried away. And so when she realized that was her husband in her soul group and that she had hurt him, she just burst into tears. And so Leah's episode is one of our episodes as well. And I'm so grateful, speaking of gratitude, for those of you who are willing to come on and share your sessions, because I know for me, those are the episodes that if I were watching, that I would most want to watch. Like, how does it work? I really would love to hear. And that's why I love sharing what people's actual sessions are like. So we also learn that we have wise elders who oversee our soul journey. They're often called the council, but sometimes they're called elders. In Leah's session, she called them her jury. And then, as you know, one of my favorite sessions, my friend Heather, hers was Mr. Mighty, the king-like Santa Claus who you go see when you're kind of in trouble. That's the only time I've ever had that in trouble situation. Well, more recently, I had a slightly different version, but the Mr. Mighty, it was just that one session. But basically, wise souls who oversee our lives. And Mr. Mighty was very soft in the end and sort of apologized for scaring the soul straight in between lives and told her she needed to ease up a little bit in this life. So that was a happy ending. And then our wise souls tell us how we're doing. They remind us of our purpose. They give encouragement and advice for this life. And then this is, I think, the big ticket item why people are interested in life between lives. But besides finding out their soul purpose, you can bring 5 or 10 questions about this life, about your journey, about anything that you want a perspective on in terms of how does this fit within your overall soul journey and life purpose. And they'll give really specific answers. Sometimes they say things as simple as drink more water. And then other times they say things like, you need to love yourself as much as you love others. And then one of my favorite ones was Ken. Again, this was sessions I did for a friend of mine way back in the beginning when I was first training. And he felt bad about his previous life that he didn't think he did enough. And they kept saying he was a very young soul and they were still getting to know him and he was still getting to know them. But they just kept saying, we don't care how well you do. We just care about you. Our answer will always be, you're doing fine. You're doing wonderfully. So much love and reassurance. We know that we go to a pre-birth life planning station. So our lives are not random. I guess that's the biggest takeaway. We get to see the life body choices that were available to us. Again, back to Ken's, he said he had 3. They were in a futuristic warehouse where you jump into pods and they shoot you off into a life. But he said in the future, he needed to slow down and not just jump in without looking. But I remember him saying, well, the one on the end is broken. And I was like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? And if I were doing the session today, I would ask a little bit more about that. But we get to see the different life body choices. I remember in Leah's, there was one that was a strong African woman and then a wealthy political family. And instead, she chose the family of kind of regular folks looking to beat the odds because there would be love and success and all sorts of other good things. Or another person, I think again in Heather's session, She chose family, but she sacrificed freedom. So we get to see the soul, body, life choices available, why we chose this particular one. You can often step into the life and try it on, see the people you're going to work with. Heather saw her children that she was going to be working with in this life. So she chose family, but she gave up freedom. And then what are the advantages and disadvantages for this body? Someone who recently had a session, I realized partway through and more after the session that she was part of the pre-birth life planning station. Like her soul group, I think, worked there. They designed the bodies. And she said that they would do the advantages and disadvantages of the body, of the life, to meet the needs of the soul, what they wanted to work on. So she said in her case, and she's given me permission to share, and she'll be coming on soon, hopefully, to share herself. She said she was not particularly tall, but she's really, really smart. So they kind of were balancing these things out in the body that she was going to choose. All right. And we do other things in our life between lives. A lot of people, this is the most common place people go to in my sessions, besides the ones I've mentioned, is or go to the library. Sometimes they call it the Hall of Records or the Akashic Records. But there are books you can check out, and it's like an infinite vast library. They say stacks of books forever, and workers there like librarians and other people looking at books. But the books are all your past lives, and they can open them up and step into them. There's also books on things that they're interested in learning about. As I mentioned before, one of my people was interested in substance abuse because she had a family member that struggled. And so she was looking up substance abuse in the brain and telling me all kinds of stuff that I couldn't understand because it was over my head. Another person who was trying to figure out love checked out a book on love, and it was a hologram, or excuse me, when he opened it up, a hologram of a heart came out and told him what to do to find a good, loving relationship. So a lot of people go to the library, and a lot of people have incarnated on other planets. A lot of underwater planets, but other planets too. There was the person who came from the planet where they didn't eat. And one of her questions was, why did she have digestive issues in this life? There's just been so many people, underwater beings, adventurous beings. It's just mind blowing. And we learn every time we do the session. So we at the Newton Institute are learning as well, along with you. And then I think this is another one of my favorite things. We have soul personalities. It's not all angels and fairy dust, as my medium teacher, Beecham Parker, used to say. We have personalities. In fact, my favorite question, or one of my favorite questions, is what soul characteristics do you carry from life to life? And sometimes it'll be something like being compassionate or being brave. But we have relationships. We have close relationships with our soul family, and then we have extended kind of other soul connections beyond our soul group. And we're all one. So this is kind of confusing, but we actually have relationships. As I mentioned, the person who is in the life body selection work, we have work, we have jobs. I've seen souls who create energy. I've seen souls in classrooms. I'm trying to think of some of the other jobs, souls that work in the soul nursery. And I've had a soul come to me who was a council member. Her soul group was a council. It just took me a while to figure it out because they told me, put that book away. This doesn't apply to that soul because she wasn't here for her development. Her council had incarnated among us to help raise our vibrational level. So we have jobs over there. And eventually, council members usually stop incarnating, but not always. So I'm just really, truly grateful and humbled by the work that Michael Newton did. And I just can't imagine my life without Life Between Lives, because when I had my sessions, I was told to stop my work as a therapist. I'm wrapping that up. I've been a licensed marriage family therapist for over 25 years. And they said, stop that. And we want you to do this full time. And I was already interested in it enough to have my sessions, but I was like, okay, here we go. And I feel like this is what I'm here to do. So now we do know what happens on the other side. It takes away the fear of death. One of the questions we ask is, what did it feel like to die? And people say freedom, relief, easy, like going to sleep. Only really you're waking up. You're going back home. And then in Brian Smith's session, he shared from his counsel, you don't have to do any life perfectly. There's always a do-over. In other words, he meant in the next life. And actually, even in this life, if we're working on a lesson and we miss a certain trajectory, we just pick it up the next time. Like the lesson will cycle back around in this life. But what his counsel was saying is there's always a do-over and that there's a next life. And over there, which is, quote, real life, this is just like a little 20-minute gap, a little break, a little vacation. That's real life. So this is just putting on a play, seeing what happens, developing certain muscles, building parts of our character, changing and advancing our soul and bringing that learning back. But it's kind of like, it's not that big of a deal. So there you have it. My gratitude for Michael Newton and my gratitude for you for being a part of this Life Between Lives soul community. So thank you so much for letting me share with you. I do have a couple announcements. When I said speaking of, I feel like this is what I am here to do. We have our Past Life Soul Journey Workshop coming up January 21 in Ojai, and we have a Black Friday special. So Leticia, my wonderful trusty assistant, will put the code in the comments, and if you're listening on a podcast, we'll include it in the description as well. But it's Black Friday 20 for individual sessions and for the workshop, and then also Black Friday package deal 20 for the combo package, which is already discounted. So we're just so excited. And because it's Black Friday, we wanted to offer this through the weekend. So if you've been waiting, these are the lowest prices of the year. And the Past Life Soul Journey Workshop will go back to full price starting next week. So we hope you'll join us. Again, when I can put together the Life Between Lives and bringing us together as a community, I just can't imagine anything more wonderful. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Hope you're having a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Lots of love.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow. And join us next week for another episode of Soul Guide.